Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Castlevania Circle of the Moon. In the last part, we finished off our time in the catacombs for the moment and made our way into the center of the castle, the audience chamber. And now, before we actively go tackle the boss in this region, I want to farm the electric skeletons right here next to the save point for our next DSS card. Specifically, before you factor in how luck changes things, the electric skeletons have a 1% chance to drop the card in question. There is an enemy towards the back third of the game that actively drops the same card at a higher 1.5% drop rate, which, when you factor in the higher luck I'd have at that point, is much more likely, but I'd rather get it now just in case. For me in specific, I think it took between 18 and 20 skeletons for the card to drop, and it might take you more, it might take you less. Worth noting, I have numbers for pretty much every single item I actively directly farm in the game, but most of my numbers are estimations because there's times where I think I may have lost count here and again, so it's probably plus or minus 2 or 3 in any direction. For doing that, we've now gained the Golem card, which is Earth Elemental. When applied alongside the Mercury Action card, gives you a whip that goes twice as far, but it is pretty slow with its rate of fire, but it is decently strong. On that note, worth noting, this will come more into play later on. But there is actively a difference between Earth Element and Stone Element in this game. Specifically, Earth Element is active Earth Elemental damage. Meanwhile, Stone Element in this game is more aptly put as Petrify Element, which is more a status element type deal than anything. That only really comes into play when it comes to defenses more often than not, honestly. For right now, it's time for us to head towards the higher of the two doors on the left in this room to actively access the audience chamber's boss fight. Worth noting, this game does largely put a boss fight in every area, but some of the smaller areas like the outer wall or an area actively directly south of me on the map right now, more or less, are so small they actively just don't have room. They're more just transitional areas than anything. There's a little rock cube over there as well. We've been seeing a couple of those since part 1. We can't do anything about those just yet, but that might change in the near future. For right now, let's face our boss fight.
Extraordinary! To be dropped into the abyss and still live! But your luck is about to run out.
Get out of my way.
Child, before I finish you, I will tell you some news. Your precious master is already in our power.
What?
That old man will feed us with his soul. The rite has been prepared, and we only await the full moon.
No. Our next boss fight is against the Necromancer, who's very shaft core from Rondo of Blood. This boss is divided into 2 different phases. Here in phase 1, he's going to generate a shield of projectiles, overall aiming to try and ram into you for some damage. After one, he does send the projectiles towards you in a spread loosely, but it's very easy to avoid. He can generate a shield to prevent projectiles from damaging him, but your whip, more often than not, will just penetrate right through it, so don't even bother worrying about that. And he can also occasionally stay still in the air with a sigil from him to summon some zombie enemies on the floor. That last technique is what you especially want to see, because while he's summoning the zombies, he stands still long enough that you can really lay down the punishment, assuming he's in a good position to do so, if he's near this platform in general, or anywhere near the floor. If he's off in one of the corners, that could be a little bit tricky in comparison. This boss has a health pool of about 500, so you got a little bit to work through at this point in the game. But worth noting, whenever a boss in this game has 2 phases, phase 2 starts at the halfway point of the health bar, by and large. Which, if you look at the numbers for health, can seem like a lot, but depending on how you actively are using the DSS system or what level you are, it can go pretty quickly. Now we're in phase 2, where he becomes a skeletal version of the demon enemy line, more or less. He is much more aggressive in this phase, usually, trying to ram into you at faster speeds, and occasionally generating an even stronger shield than the one he used in the previous phase that makes him completely invincible. When he does that, he's going to bounce around the room quickly like he's a DVD player logo. On this run in specific, he was actually feeling very generous to me and basically only used this phase's version of the summoning skill, where he summons several skeleton enemies to the floor instead, which, upon killing him, they die anyway. I know Master's still alive. Hold on, I'll be there. Though, where's Hugh? Yeah, we haven't seen him in a little bit, have we? Our reward for beating that boss is the tackle. Forwarding the special move button makes the player charge. Some blocks can be destroyed with this move. So if you actively tap left and right alongside the special move button, which by default is on R, you can now do a rolling charge. You can use it to damage enemies or even pass through some smaller hitboxes. But the bigger part of this ability is that you might recall those pale blue stone blocks that are about Nathan's height we've seen several times throughout the castle. If you roll into those, they will shatter, allowing you to access whole new sections of the map. With that said, I'm not going out of my way to clean up every stone block we've seen thus far. Mostly because some of them are just out of the way enough, I'd rather wait until we're either in the vicinity already for something else, or until I have more power-ups that allow me to grab more items in that area. This ability is alright. I don't really use it for combat. I pretty much only ever use it as an exploration key, more or less. But it does represent 1.5 of one of my other issues with Circle of the Moon that I'll get into about 2 or 3 areas from now, I want to say. Now, I did actively enter this room in specific, at least its very first tile on the left side earlier on, because we're actively coming back to where we first entered the audience chamber. Something I do on and off in the footage is not really roleplay, but I kind of showcase like, oh, there's a room over here. We can't do anything at it. Might as well wait until later. And that's because I kind of enter 2 different mind spaces when I'm playing a Metroidvania. Sometimes I enter autopilot for exploration. I just check every tile there is, but sometimes I'm like, okay, I know I don't need to go over there, so I just completely ignore that yet, when it might have some important information for later. The Triumph hallway here is actively an area we cannot do much in yet. I'm here more or less just for a single HP max up that's in a hidden passageway, but there is a passageway we cannot access here yet, as well as a pathway we can access but can't grab all the items on yet. I wait to do the latter until we actively have like the last movement utility in the game. Though if you just get the next movement utility and play around trickily with the double jump alongside being able to freeze an enemy in that area, you can get the items there earlier. I just don't trust myself because that takes just enough setup that I know I can screw it up more easily. Worth noting though, if you are the type of player who likes to farm out items as early as you can for some good upgrades as soon as possible, if you follow the pathway through that door there on the left all the way to its terminus, you'll find a flame armor near the castle entrance. They have 2 drops, one of which is the rare drop, is a heart EX, which you can use to recover 50 hearts. Decent to have. But their common drop at a base 5% drop chance is a bronze armor, which is a notable upgrade compared to anything else we've gotten at this point in the game. I get one of them eventually via another enemy towards the far right side of the map, but if you get one now, you might have it for the next area, which can come in handy. Just be careful, because if you go over there as soon as you can, they'll also do a decent chunk of damage to you, and that can go south very, very quickly. This is also probably the best room to farm out the Clinking Mans for the Miracle Armband in case you want one, because there's one just outside that door, as you just saw. But I don't farm that out. I think I get one by complete chance later on, though, off the top of my head. This door here is our actual destination, because now we can break down that rock block and progress on to our next area, which is one of my favorite areas in the game, especially musically. Mind you, that's slightly cheating, because getting ahead of ourselves here, the upcoming area's theme is a remix of a song from Castlevania 3. And while Castlevania usually has good music to begin with, classic Vania always had good music, so kind of cheating there just a tad. I guess at that point, I might as well actively start talking about this game's sound team. There's 2 music composers listed for the game, Sotaro Tojima and Hiroshi Mitsuoka. Briefly starting with the second one, Mitsuoka is only credited in this game as far as I can find. Meanwhile, Sotaro Tojima started on the sound team for Blaze and Blade Busters on the PS1, and did music and sound for several of the Game Boy Color ports of the Pop! Music franchise. Starting with Metal Gear Solid 2, though, they've been a series regular on the sound team, also working on Twin Snakes, Snake Eater and its remake, Portable Ops, and Guns of the Patriots. They're also listed as an audio director on Halo 4, 5, and Infinite, which is kind of bizarre to see compared to the rest of that list. Welcome to the Machine Tower. It's our clock tower for the game, which actively plays a remix of Clockwork from Castlevania 3, one of my favorite songs in that game as it is. Being the clock tower, this is already one of the more platforming-intensive areas in the game. We have a lot of platforms that raise up and along these shafts. We got moving platforms to move left and right. You gotta be careful, because if you actively mess up a jump here or get knocked back, you will actively lose a good bit of progress in several rooms. Most of the rooms here are vertically structured as well, and you're going to be winding left and right through that, so even with points where you don't get knocked back, if you fall too far, it's easy to get trapped in certain parts and have to redo them. But in the meanwhile, let's finally talk about how some parts of this game clearly feel a little off compared to the game that came before or after in this genre for the franchise. And there's one main reason why, in my eyes. Effectively, this was a B-team game. Koji Igarashi actively did not work on this game pretty much at all. During this game's development time, he would have, off the top of my head, either largely been focused on Konami's Elder Gate RPG for the PS1, as well as the PS1 remake of Castlevania 1, Castlevania Chronicles. Instead, this game's lead, being both the producer and planner, so effectively director, was Koji Horie, who usually in prior projects was in the art team largely. They did character design on Parodius and Contra Force, as well as some later re-releases of Parodius, and also did art for Beatmania and Poppin' Music on the Game Boy Color, alongside doing some work on Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2004 for the Game Boy Advance. Heck, that specialty even bleeds into this game because they were also the game's only menu designer and one of 3 different background designers for the game. They continue to do similar work on the Konami GBA Shaman King titles, as well as Portrait of Ruin and Order of Ecclesia on the DS. Off the top of my head, just from remembering things on the Moby Games page, I think he also directed one of the PS1 Goemon games. I forget exactly which one, though, because there were several of those that didn't make it over here. So if you're playing this game and just notice that some things feel a little bit different in one regard or another compared to other games, even down to the game feel, it's largely due to the fact it was a wholly separate dev team working on it, which has happened in other series before, and whenever it happens, you can always kind of tell when the game feel because something's just always a little bit off in some regards. It still feels good, but it's just very different feeling. Looking at the results here, the most common game that these people all shared together on this dev team was actively Konami Crazy Racers of all things. Either way, we just lucked out and finally got our second action card, allowing us to further experiment with the DSS. We just got the Jupiter card, which heat shades have a roughly 2% base chance of dropping off the top of my head. The combos this card creates are largely themed around defenses tied to the element of the attribute card. With what we have at the moment, you can either have 2 fireballs rotate around you slowly, 4 ice balls quickly rotate around you, or actively get 2 more subtle defense buffs in some form. When paired with Mandragora, if you stand still for a moment, you'll slowly regenerate HP, albeit at a very low rate. But one of my favorites in the game is actively the Jupiter Golem combo, especially on a first-time run or a low-level run. Specifically, when you pair Jupiter and Golem and activate it, your invincibility frames upon getting hit are quadrupled, allowing you to just soar past troublesome enemies in the case you just want to ignore them. It's also very useful in the case you're low on HP and are just trying to make a mad dash to the nearest HP max up you know is there or a save point you remember being nearby. It's a very good combo for your survivability. With that said, there is one thing I haven't mentioned yet about the DSS, and that's that there's a very famous glitch tied to it that completely removes the effort involved in farming cards. Namely, if you press the L button to activate any combo of cards you do actively own, if you're quick, you can enter the DSS menu and swap to any other combo of cards, even ones you don't have yet, and that effect will take place instead. So I could say gain one of my favorite effects in the game by activating the Jupiter Golem combo and instead quickly entering the menu and swapping to the 10th action card and 6th attribute card and just completely break the early game in ways that you probably shouldn't be able to outside of certain post-game modes. There have been playthroughs where I effectively just get the starting Salamander Mercury combo and then just use this glitch the rest of the game because I just find it to be a more fun experience largely, but for this LP, I decided not to use that glitch. More so I could actively show off where the cards are and all that jazz. There is a somewhat tangentially related glitch that I do take advantage of later on, but that more involves one specific area's gimmick that I'll talk about in like the second to last part or so. We have a new enemy here, the Thunder Demon. These guys rain 3 or 4 lightning bolts in your general vicinity. Can be kind of hard to avoid in some setups. These guys notably do have the same magic gauntlet the Earth Demon did, in case you didn't grab one earlier and you do want one for one reason or another. But the big thing is they also have a new DSS card for us. With that said, there's one specific Thunder Demon I like to farm from because it's in a place that's easier to get in and out of. So I'd recommend saving it unless you just happen to get it by complete chance here. With that said, there is a different DSS card I'm going to be farming in this general vicinity, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, a few moments ago, earlier in the clock tower, I actively did grab our next sub-weapon type, the usual stopwatch. When you use it, it actively will slow down some enemy or boss movements while also completely stopping others. It is a very expensive sub-weapon, being the most expensive at usually about 10 to 12 hearts per use. With that said, there are some enemies you actively need the stopwatch if you want to kill. But I'll talk more about those when they come into play in several parts. Heck, there's one I basically never actually kill because I don't think it's really worth showing off too much, but again, I'll save that topic for later. For right now, I want to get to the doorway that's on the mid-left of the area, as that is a room where you can get another, I think, HP max up. But the enemy in there is the one I want to farm for our next DSS card. You can find them all across the area, but pretty much every single enemy that drops a DSS card, you can usually find in one of these smaller one-off rooms where you can get an HP harder MP max up. Which makes the grinding process quite a bit more simple. In here in specific is the rock armor. These guys can be deceptively tricky because they throw 3 rocks that slowly get closer to the enemy, but when they touch the ground, they shatter into smaller pebbles that can also damage you, and there's several enemies that do that exact thing in this game, and I forget it every single time. I farmed this enemy for about 60 kills at this point. As for their drops, their common drop is actively this, the Hard Ring. This boosts Nathan's defense by 50, but lower his strength and luck by 10. Depending on what you want to do, this can be pretty nice, especially for boss fights. I think I put one on maybe for a little bit coming up here, but not too often. But the other thing I'm trying to get here is the DSS card, which has a base, roughly 2% chance of dropping, I believe. Approximately 50 kills later, we get the card to finally drop, and this is a bit of a fun one. This is the Cockatrice card. This is the one that's Stone Elemental, not Earth. Again, those are two separate elements. Stone Elemental is effectively Petrify Elemental. When paired with our 2 action cards, it can either generate a short-range Stone Whip that can petrify enemies, which works similarly to freezing. That's the other attribute you can use to climb enemies in midair. And when paired with the Jupiter card, it turns Nathan to stone and makes him pretty much completely invincible. With that said, you can't move for shit. You walk slower. I don't even think you can jump. It's more to avoid certain attacks, I'd say. There's probably some more smart plays you can do with that in very specific circumstances, but I basically never use it. I do try to showcase quite a few of the DSS combos throughout the game, but I don't show them all off because there's some that are just either too awkward for me to use or I just don't find very worth showing off. I will mention most of the combos, though, as I grab the remaining cards. So at this point, you might have noticed a few moments ago when I paused, we're roughly about 32% of the way through the game's map at this point, which mathematically is about a third of the map, but for reasons we'll get into later, there's actually 2 areas in the game that are completely optional, and if you do skip those, it's probably closer to like 45% of the game in total. Think about what we've seen throughout the map thus far in terms of pickups and collectibles. I imagine 4 things just came to mind. The 3 stat max up varieties and just an umbrella term for movement upgrades like the double or the tackle, all that jazz. But can you think of anything else? The answer is probably no. Every single DSS card and equipment upgrade we've found has been through an enemy drop. And this is actually one of my more specific complaints about Circle of the Moon. I don't think it rewards exploration as interestingly as Symphony or any of the other Metroidvanias for this franchise. The others will all have those items be tied to exploration as well, but they'll also have some glyphs or some new equipment you can find that's just out on the floor in certain rooms, which means your rewards are always varied and you might not know what to expect, so you feel more incentivized to find every tile of the map. There's a certain point in this game where I just almost feel like stopping doing that because I know it's just going to be another MP max up or heart max up or HP max up, and that's just nowhere near as interesting due to that. And the thing is, you still want to get all 3 of those upgrade types because they really do help you boost your numbers for endgame. But when most of the really interesting things you can do to change your loadout between the DSS cards and equipment are tied to farming, it makes exploration in this game feel a lot less important. Which, mind you, I'd say there's several games in this genre that actually fall into this type of issue where the exploration doesn't feel as worth it to do for one reason or another. Heck, as much as I love Metroid, not for nothing, its upgrades that you find throughout the map also fall into largely just being ammo upgrades. But given what Samus's moveset is, that makes more sense to have for her than it would for, say, Nathan and the other Castlevania protagonists. Metroid, especially 2D, has largely always been more of a puzzle about where you can go next and what you can find there. Meanwhile, Castlevania has that as an element, but it's more about the RPG mechanics and getting stronger as you go to fight through the castle. But due to the fact that most upgrades in this game are tied exclusively to farming, it makes this game's pace of exploration just feel a lot worse, and it's one of my least favorites in the genre due to that, honestly. Worth noting, though, a moment ago, I actively killed the slime enemy we've been seeing since, actually, the Catacombs to get our next DSS card. The Venus card, which has a roughly 2.5% chance to drop from that enemy. This card's combos largely deal with altering Nathan's stats, namely the Salamander combo raises Nathan's strength by 12%, the Serpent combo raises his defense by 25%, the Golem combo raises his defense by an amount relative to the amount of the map you've discovered percentage-wise. The Cockatrice combo gives Nathan 1 experience point for every 3 steps walked, not ran, which makes it somewhat useless, honestly. But the big combo here for me is Venus and Mandragora, which raises your luck by a whopping 25%. This combo is one of your best friends when it comes to farming enemy drops and other cards. Heck, a moment ago, I killed an Earth Armor in another room and got a Gauntlet from it. That's a base roughly 4% drop. But it also has a rare drop at a 2% base chance. That is the Gold Armor. That raises your defense by 80, 30 more than the armor I currently have on. So if you can use the Mandragora and Venus combo to farm that up, you'll have a pretty decent upgrade for a good area and a half or so. The big issue there is, again, you have to farm it, and depending on the type of person you are, you will not find that engaging or fun whatsoever. I can, in some cases. I think this game just kind of goes overkill with it compared to some other entries, outside of maybe specifically Arya and Dawn if you're going for all the souls. But even then, I'd still say farming here feels worse because Nathan just controls worse, the armor upgrades are locked behind it and all that jazz. It's just a bigger mess of farming, even if it's not the main focus of getting 100%, so to speak. I guess in that regard, I should say, whenever I usually come back to Circle of the Moon as rare as it is, I actually don't usually play the game on its base mode. I actively play one of the modes you unlock after beating the game. Namely, like with Symphony of the Night, there are several modes you can access by changing the input on the name screen. Specifically, there's Magician mode, which you activate by starting a new game and typing in Fireball name entry. Fighter mode, which you do by inputting Gradius as your name. Shooter mode, which you activate by inputting Crossbow as your name. And Thief mode, which you activate by putting Dagger as your name. Going backwards through those modes, Thief mode is directly luck mode from Symphony of the Night, where Nathan's luck is pumped out the ass, but he has less and gains fewer numbers in the other stats as he levels. In shooter mode, sub-weapons do a lot more damage and have their heart costs halved, and there's also a unique homing knife sub-weapon in that mode if you collect 2 knives in a row, which is interesting, but I still prefer the good old cross boomerang and holy water. In fighter mode, the DSS is outright disabled, but Nathan's physical stats are ridiculous, making him an unstoppable tank as you go. It's overall probably the easiest mode to play as well. Magician mode's my preferred favorite though, as it pumps Nathan's MP and Int to ridiculous levels, on top of starting you with every DSS card by default, so you can take advantage of the really fun combos right off the bat, which I just find fun to play. With that said, he is still decently fragile in that mode, so watch out. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're gonna wrap up our time here in the Machine Tower for now by fighting its boss, and move on to our next area from there. See you guys then.